Hey you guys, it's Peter and welcome to my channel. Peter likes books. And I am very excited, but at the same time, somewhat nervous about starting this venture. So if you didn't watch my video yesterday, I asked on there what people thought about the possibility of me reading my book, The Before Now and After Then, on this channel, doing like 2 to 3 chapters a day on here until completion of the book. A lot of people have been asking where they can find a copy right now, and it is out of print, so I thought this would be a good way to give back. A couple people were nice enough to say, I don't think you should give it away, you know, like just for free, but you can't buy it right now, and I don't know when it's going to be available again, so for right now I was like, why not just do this? You know, I can always take those videos down the road. So I thought, this is something I want to do. I've never read it out loud. It's actually been several years since I've read it. And the last time I just listened to the Audible version, which is no longer available. So, you know, I thought this would be really, really fun for me. I can actually sit down. I haven't read this book since it first was completed. So I think the last time I read it was 6 years ago. And I read it fully when it first came out, but it was actually the original hardback copy, which is this. The Before, Now, and After Then. It has this tape cover on the front of it. It says by Peter Monn. And it has a quote on the back of it from the book and says, "And then I would cry because even though boys don't cry, I did." And so then it has a little synopsis underneath here. And then inside of it is my picture and all of that kind of stuff. And it says, "My name is Peter Monn, and I am, most importantly, a moon child. I take a 3-hour nap every day, eat loads of mac and cheese, and love to drive around late at night and listen to music. I am not ashamed to admit I am a huge fan of 80s punk rock and old country. My favorite pastime is chasing full moons, reading 1940s pulp mystery novels, gambling in Vegas, and reciting movie lines." And so anyway, this one is, and here's another quote inside that says, "The magic to life was in the unknowing. What mattered most was what happened in those sacred spaces between the before, now, and after then, where memories lived forever suspended in our hearts. Those were the places most sacred because they couldn't be counted in time." And I can tell you already, before I get into this, I'm going to cry doing this, because there are parts of this book that have deeper meanings to me than just writing a book, that they're very personal. They're stories from my own life that I've kind of woven in here, things like that. This one I actually dedicated to my husband, and it says, "To Alex, you will forever be my greatest B-side, XO Peter." And because it's about tapes. There's cassette tapes in this book, so you know, A-side, B-side. And anyway, so I got such a positive response from it yesterday that I thought, I'm going to start this. I'm going to do this. So, are you ready? Today I'm going to probably read, I don't know how long the chapters are. The book is really short. It's under 300 pages. So I think today I'll probably read, I don't know, 1 or 2 chapters. We'll see. We'll see how far we get, okay? And are you guys ready? Oh my God, I'm so nervous about this. So anyway, yeah, here you go. The Before, Now, and After Then by me. To all of the kids who didn't think they were good enough, and the ones who are still hanging on, be brave. Life truly is a sweet experience. And to the real rusty, wherever you are. In the end, we're all just one big group of freaks, I guess, trying to find ourselves in this crazy world. And I'll always be that gay boy, trying desperately to find my own something to live for, never realizing that those things most important are always right in front of your face. Alex Knight from Suburban Wasteland. February 24th. The scheme was delicious, and we had been planning it for over a month. Sam didn't really think Mom and Dad would care that much that I was gay. But he thought if I was going to come out to them, we needed to cover any basis for a potential emotional breakdown. We decided it would be best to break the news right before our birthday dinner, leaving out any possible chance for weeping from our mother. I can't even remember if I ever came out to Sam. He just always knew. I guess it's that way with most twins, knowing something about our counterpart without them ever telling us. The way he was always so protective of me would make you think that he was the older one, but that wasn't the case. I had left him behind in the womb for greater ventures of a new world exactly 18 minutes before he chose to follow me, kicking and screaming, as I lay quietly in my father's arms. This grand entrance would set the direction for the rest of our lives. Sam fighting while I sat idly by, living through his adventures and allowing the world to happen to me instead of actually living myself. At first, we thought it would be hilarious for Sam to be the one to come out to our parents, as me, of course, since our status is uniquely identical, could confuse even our own parents. But in the end, we decided it was my life, and for once, I had to do something on my own. The plan was that Sam would take our Jack Russell Terrier Griffin to the Bark Park for an hour, while I would work up enough nerve to talk to my parents. Just as I was finishing, Sam would come home and ring the doorbell, as if he had forgotten his keys. This way distracting any warfare or love fest that might be occurring inside. After that, he would tell our parents he had known forever and that it was no big deal, blah, blah, blah. And could we finally head over to the melting pot for our annual birthday dinner? We'd all laugh, get changed, and head to the restaurant. I'd like to tell you that's what happened. I'd like to tell you that Sam and I blew out 17 perfect birthday candles on a half chocolate, half vanilla birthday cake, just like every other year. But that isn't the case. Sam and Griffin headed out the door into a surprisingly warm February day, got into the black Jeep Wrangler we shared, and drove off toward the Bark Park as I stood on our broad front porch, staring after them. I sat down on the steps for at least a half an hour, rehearsing my lines over and over in my head. I don't know what I was so afraid of, since both of my parents had gay friends and were open about their liberal beliefs, but sometimes parents freak when it comes to their own kids, and I thought maybe it would be too much for them. I stood up, deciding that the anxiety of waiting was greater than actually saying the words, and walked inside. I paused at the bottom of the staircase and could hear muffled words from behind my parents' bedroom door. I slowly walked up the stairs, holding the banister tightly, trying to be quiet so I could decipher the words as they grew louder with each step. I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but kept on hearing my mom repeating, Jenny, the name of my father's personal trainer. I was confused as to why they would be talking about her, but as I got to the top of the steps, I began to understand. I'm sure you love me, my mother said as she slammed a drawer shut. I'm sure that's exactly what you're thinking while you're fucking Jenny. Sorry. It's not like that, my father begged. It didn't start like that. It just happened. I could hear my mom crying. I just stood there at the top of the stairs, unable to move. Whatever was happening on the other side of the door, I was now part of, whether they knew it or not. What are we going to tell the boys, Mom asked. What's going to happen to us? To me. We can work through this. I love you, Alice, Dad pleaded. I heard the undeniable sound of what could only be a slap, flesh against flesh. And before I could turn and walk back down the stairs, the door flew open, both of my parents staring at me with surprised faces. I could actually hear the sound of my watch, the same watch that exactly a year before they had bought Sam and I as matching birthday presents, ticking as time passed between us. I had no idea what to say or do, so I said the only thing my mind was trying to say at that moment. I'm gay. They both continued to stare at me as if we were in stop-motion animation, waiting for the next frame to spring them into action, when suddenly the doorbell rang. Sam, always perfectly on time, was back to save the day. This is unbelievable, Mom uttered, walking past me and down the stairs toward the front door. I was praying the door would fly open and Sam would make the joke we had prepared. Are we all having a gay afternoon? But instead of Sam, the door opened to two police officers shrouded in the dancing light of their cars, echoing across the early dusk, falling on our lawn. Mrs. Goldstein, one of them asked, and before Mom could even answer, nod or acknowledge her identity, I knew. I just knew. The before now. Chapter 1. Mom changed a song on her iPod to The Cure's Boys Don't Cry and began whispering the words. The irony that she had evolved from Angst Alice, the punk girl who ran away her junior year in high school to hear the Circle Jerks play in a club on New Year's Eve in New York City, into a suburbanite mother who rocked a gold Rolex and drove a black Range Rover with tinted windows, was not missed on me. She still stayed true to her roots, outfitted in a black Fender guitar t-shirt and cut-off jean shorts, with her white, blonde, choppy hair tucked behind her ears, now pierced with one solid carat diamond in each lobe. Although she was kind of a sellout, Mom had been the real deal back in the day, a first-class groupie who eventually fell back in love with the nerdy guy she had started a band with their freshman year, settling down and becoming the wife of a plastic surgeon. I guess she could have done much worse. Without missing a beat from the song during the instrumental break, she grabbed my hand and looked over at me while we sat at a stoplight. It's going to be okay, she said. You'll love this new school, and your dad and I will work things out, I promise. I sat there silent, thinking about those words. I promise. Promises were just words people said to make you feel better, even though they had no intention of keeping them. Sam and I had made tons of promises to each other throughout the years. Most important being that no matter what happened, He'd never leave me. He knew I couldn't handle life on my own. It had always been that way. Whereas to others, our outsides mirrored each other perfectly, our insides were completely opposite. We both had extremely curly blonde hair and blue eyes, and we were both short but naturally lean. Side by side, you couldn't tell us apart. But something had happened in the birth canal because I was given the gene of complete trepidation and fear of the unknown, most importantly of myself, while Sam was given absolute confidence. Even as little kids, I trusted him completely, letting him be one step ahead, while I held his shirt from behind. He had been my protector and my only friend. Sam had been popular and athletic, taking a spot on the varsity lacrosse roster when he was only a freshman. Besides having tons of friends, he also dated the hottest girl at our school and was completely faithful, even when she wasn't around and other girls would crush all over him. He was kind, not only around adults, but even when people weren't looking and listening. He never studied, yet he got great grades, landing easily in the top 10 in our class, while I was forced to study all the time just to get C's. Sam was incredibly loyal and protective, if not overly protective of me. And even though I never quite fit in, he always kept me around. Always. When our parents moved into a house with 6 bedrooms, 3 more than we needed, we chose to continue to share one. Lying awake late at night, he would tell me about the first time he kissed his girlfriend Jess and how he was so nervous that he almost threw up. When they first had sex, he told me about that too, but left out details that would make me uncomfortable or betray her privacy. In everyone's eyes, Sam had been almost perfect, and there had been times in those last 6 months that I had thought it should have been me instead of him. Many times. After the accident, Mom told Dad she couldn't stay in the house, and she and I moved to the other side of town to a neighborhood of houses that looked like they could be found in Cape Cod or Provincetown, even though they dotted the edge of a man-made reservoir in Indiana. Dad stayed in the old house, and on weekends when I visited him, I'd sit in our old room and talk to Sam out loud like he was still there. I'd tell him about the new house and how Mom had decided she wanted everything to be white because she wanted a new beginning. We had white floors, white walls, and white leather furniture. Even my room was all white, except for my curious George clock I got as a birthday present when I was 8. It was an old-fashioned wind-up clock with bells on top and a picture of George playing on a ball. I loved watching the clock tick, soothing me back to a time when I was happy. While looking up at the glow-in-the-dark stars to our ceiling, I'd act as if he could really hear me. I'd tell him how his friends stopped by those first few weeks after the accident. They would visit with Mom and Dad, talking and telling stories about him, while closely watching me out of the corner of their eyes. I think I reminded them too much of Sam, and eventually, they stopped coming. I told him how I realized after he was gone that the only friends I had were his friends, and once he wasn't around, they weren't really my friends anymore. Even his girlfriend Jess stopped calling after the first month. I told him about how I had to start a new high school because Mom and Dad thought it would be best for me to have a fresh start, and how I was sick of all this fresh start business, and that I just wanted to go back to before now when it was just that day, and we were synchronizing our matching watches. And then I would cry, because even though boys don't cry, I did. All of those things were going through my mind as Mom pulled up to Creston High School, the snobbiest public high school in Indiana, and the new home of my senior year. I couldn't be more thrilled. The only good thing about it was the school year started on a Thursday, making the whole first week only 2 days, exactly 16 hours and 20 minutes. Mom put the car into park and turned to me, grabbing my hand. I could see tears falling down her cheeks from underneath the side of her huge black Chanel sunglasses. "Danny, I love you very much. This has been very hard on all of us. I wish you were here too," she said, choking on her words as she took off her sunglasses and folded them in her lap. "I miss him every goddamn day, every second, every minute, every hour. But I had 2 children when I had twins, and you're just as special to me as Sam was. Do you hear me?" I nodded, not really knowing what to say. Mom had broken down so many times in the past few months that these movie script monologues were almost exactly the same every time. It wasn't that I didn't believe her or feel bad for her. I just didn't know what to say. "Anyway, I don't want you to start crying before you head into your first day of school." She looked in the mirror and cleared the tears away from under her eyes, replacing her sunglasses. "I have a little surprise for you," she continued with an undertone of excitement. "Your Uncle Alex is coming to stay with us for a while. He's working on a new book and wants to come home to write it, and I just need him. Plus, I think his being there will be good for you too." My Uncle Alex wasn't exactly my uncle. He was my mom's best friend from high school, the same guy she had run away with to New York, and the same guy she had started a band with in freshman year, along with my father. After high school, Alex had written a book called Suburban Wasteland about a group of teenagers from the Midwest who bond during their senior year in high school. The storyline centered around the main character, Woody, who brought all of the other misfits characters together, inspiring them to help each other survive the terrors of high school. At the end of the book, when he killed himself, and Mom said it was the first book that had really made people stand up and take young people seriously. The thing about the book wasn't that it was the greatest story ever told, which it was, or that it had all these amazing, unforgettable characters, which it did. It was so much more than all of that. Uncle Alex had been so fuck the government, fuck the man when he was a freshman at Indiana University that when he had submitted a shorter version of the book to a creative writing class for an assignment, his professor had begged him to send it to a publisher. He refused. Instead, he formed a Suburban Wasteland zine, each edition holding a chapter and only making 100 copies of each edition. The book was passed around through a tightly wound underground net of followers who then passed it on to friends and siblings, and eventually they made copies and the book was everywhere. It had become a crazy social phenomenon with Uncle Alex at the helm of this huge rebellious ship. He eventually signed on with a publisher and moved to Tahiti to work on his second book, writing my mother a postcard which she still kept on the refrigerator. The back had only 3 words inscribed: "I've sold out." He had become one of the most sought-after writers alive, almost a celebrity, but I think it's because of the crazy following he started with those zines, which sell for about $1,000 each on eBay and are impossible to find. We have all 50 copies neatly placed in a plastic container in our basement next to our Halloween and Christmas decorations. The book was now required reading for most AP English classes, and Sam even had to read it last year for his sociology class. I guess nobody had ever expected Suburban Wasteland to do very well, but it had turned out to be the rebellious great American novel. The completed book was turned into a movie, earning Alex an Oscar and inspiring him to write 5 more books, each garnering the same praise. I had read every single one of his books, and I was his biggest fan. Mom knew how much I loved Uncle Alex, hero worshipped him from afar, and the fact that he had been gay and out since he was my age was an added plus. I'm sure she thought he could give me advice and be the perfect gay mentor to my very silent and always afraid, mostly awkward self. Mom pulled up in front of the school and put the truck into park. "Are you going to be okay?" I always thought that was a strange question. What exactly was okay? It wasn't happy, and it wasn't sad, yet it wasn't fine either. I wasn't sure what it meant. "Yeah, I'll be okay," I smiled, trying my best to reassure her that I would in fact be okay. She smiled back. "Your dad is picking you up today to take you to your counseling session. He'll pick you up right here." I wasn't even willing to fight having to go to counseling anymore. It really wasn't that bad, and my counselor Neil was pretty cool. I just didn't think it was helping. The fact that we usually sat in silence, my stance and our refusal to speak while Neil spun a pen in his finger probably didn't help me get better. The reality was, I didn't know what was wrong with me to get better. Neil believed in this kind of therapy where anything that I brought up was what we needed to talk about. So if I didn't talk, we didn't talk. I liked having control of that silence. Usually, he'd just get up at the end and walk me to the door. "Hang in there, Daniel," he'd say, which was always interesting to me since he called me Danny throughout the entire session. "See you next time." Although those words weren't necessarily therapy, they were therapeutic to some extent, knowing that some things were certain. I grabbed my bag and climbed out of the car. As Mom drove away, I looked down at the 2 identical plastic diving watches on my wrist, one mine and the other Sam's. They were identical in every way except for the color. Sam's was black and mine was white. Even though I had been wearing them together all summer, I now realized how stupid they looked, climbing on top of each other up my arm. I took mine off and put it in the pocket of my bag before glancing back at Sam's watch. 8 more hours until I was free. So, there's the first 2, or the preface and the chapter. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. I will tell you this, it's funny rereading it, that like, I know some people will think, like, will jump to conclusions that some things in the book are true and some things aren't and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, like, when my dad first read this book, he was like, "Yeah, I didn't cheat on your mom." I was like, "Yeah, it's not you, Dad." So not everything in the book is true, but like some things I did choose to use, like Alex's name and things like that are obviously, you know, from my personal life. And there's a couple other stories in the book that are based on truth, like my mom and I burying this penny. It comes up later in the book, and when we moved out of the house that I grew up in, we put a penny and we put it in the fireplace, but in the book they do something different with it. And it's funny because there's a part in there about snow globes at a grandmother's house, and my cousin, when she read the book, my cousin Caroline, she said, "Did Grandma really keep snow globes?" I don't remember that. I said, "No, Caroline." She's like, "Well, I don't know what's true and what's not in the book." I said, "There's very little that's based on truth in the book." But anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below, if you're going to continue to listen, if you're not interested, and I will be back tomorrow with 2 more chapters. I love you guys, and I will see you then. Bye.